Well, thank you. That's very much. It kind of depends on who you talk to, but I think we have the majority at least.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much.
Okay, it being just past 6 p.m., I'll go ahead and call the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to order for January 5th, 2021. The Deputy County Clerk has verified the roll. All members are present except for two at this moment, Supervisors Borton and Supervisor Spellman. So we'll move on to the first items, which are the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. If you could please all stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Now the invocation by Supervisor Locke. Supervisor Locke.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to care for the world you have made. We ask that your blessing would rest on this board and that you give us great vision and enthusiasm in this new year. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Supervisor Locke. Next item on the agenda is a motion to adopt this evening's agenda, and for that I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
Move to adopt this evening's agenda.
Second. There's a motion and a second to adopt this evening's agenda. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Moving on down to the next item. That's a time during each agenda in which we give an opportunity for the public to speak on any item under this evening's agenda or any item under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? If so, please go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. I'll call on each of you in succession. I see two call-ins. I'm first going to call on Tamara Mathwig. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I think you have my name. I'm a Winnebago County citizen, and I am requesting that this board resume meetings in person. I have collected the data that has been given to the public from the Winnebago County Health Department. The data shows that since the beginning of November, confirmed COVID cases have been trending down, sharply trending down. We are now at a level we were at when the board decided to remove meetings from the public and have them on Zoom only. Zoom has been incredibly difficult to watch. It is hard to hear. There is so much background information, background noise going on. There's TVs, there's dogs, there's spouses, there's people calling in. It is really difficult to participate in those meetings and to watch them. So thankfully for you folks, you can meet in public again because our COVID cases for this county, per your own health department, are now trending down. That's public record. You can look that up. So because of the mass amount of stores that are open to the public, restaurants are open to the public, and even the surrounding schools are open, there is really no reason why you're hindering the public from being able to meet with you in person. If any board members are very afraid of COVID and they have their own things going on, stay home. But the rest of us, we deserve to meet in public together. So that needs to happen. That's the excuses are gone now. Another thing I would like to say is that I don't know what kind of support you all think you have, but the public behind the scenes has been gathering together in large amounts. We are strong. We have strong groups gathered together. And we do plan on removing any radical board members that have unconstitutionally passed 1108. We have not forgotten about that. I know I just heard you all rolling your eyes, and that's fine, but we are working together against you to unseat you. as we need to do that. I'm talking about the Karens and the Snyders and the Wingrams and the Ramoses and the Harrises. We are definitely working together to unseat you folks. Thankfully, there are trusted, courageous community members that are running for board positions, and we're teeing that all up. Another point is this Community Diversity Affairs Commission thing that specifically is going to be targeting health equity plans. Guys, you don't need any more boards. This county has enough boards. We're not doing this. We're not going there. Okay? You don't have to take this any further. You guys are already facing really strong public scrutiny from what you just pulled since June. Okay, you don't know it, but you have some legal action that's going to be coming against you because of everything that's been going on since June. Now, you don't know what I'm referring to because your lawyer smoothed everything over and told you everything was going to be fine. So you're all sitting fine on that. But there's board members in St. Croix in our state that are experiencing the ramifications for their choices against their citizens. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, you could spend some time looking that up. And also, in addition to that, I'm sure you've been hearing the news that there's probably a new strain of COVID that's going to be making its way to the United States pretty soon. Other countries are already starting their lockdown. And this is when I think we're going to see some public uprising here, because I'm assuming this is where you want to be using 1108, right, against your citizens. This is where it's going to come into play, perhaps. So we have... you have not lost the community. The community is still watching. So the only thing I'd like to just finish with is I would really appreciate if you would do us the honor of meeting in person again. We just talked about all the cases that are trending down. There's no reason you need to hide behind your cameras anymore and make it difficult for the rest of us to participate. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Jennifer Koser. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Jennifer Koser, and I'm from Winnebago.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It
She's
has
telling
been
Donna.
49 days since you voted to pass the unlawful amendment 1108. It has been 21 days since you created the Diversity Affairs Commission. I am still adamantly opposed to both 1108 and the Diversity Affairs Commission. And as I heard Supervisor Norton say at the last meeting, that the Diversity Affairs Commission wants to implement the health equity plan. I read the health equity report document that was presented at your September 1st, 2020 meeting. And I am strongly opposed to that as well. That is a socialist plan in a document, basically. And I would like to say to the board members who are a part of the Diversity Affairs Commission, do not implement the health equity plan. We, the people, do not want socialism in Winnebago County. Also, regarding Amendment 1108, that is an unlawful amendment, and everyone who voted to pass 1108 has violated the oath they took when they accepted their position on this board. We have not forgotten your actions regarding 1108, and this is not going to go away. We are not going away. We are watching you, and we will continue to watch you. I urge you to re-vote on 1108. Protect the citizens' rights by voting to rescind that unlawful amendment. Do the right thing. Thank you. That's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Diane Koser. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Diane Koser. I'm a citizen of Winnebago County. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. In a very nice conversation that I had with Mark Harris many months ago, he laughingly told me that an angry citizen had actually called him a communist. Back then, I knew absolutely nothing about County Executive Harris and had never before felt the need to watch what he or the Board of Supervisors was doing. So I thought that the angry citizen was just letting off steam in a somewhat disrespectful way. I was wrong, because after watching this board operate for the better part of a year, I can clearly see the communistic direction you are moving our country in. First, against strong opposition from your citizens, that's we the people, you passed amended 1108. Do you really think that we will ever forget what you've done? Ever. Your actions were constitutionally unlawful and they violated your oath of office. Then you passed the formation of the Diversity Affairs Commission. It's clear to me that you're moving toward implementing the health equity plan as well, which is absolute socialism. I have read it too. And there is no way to describe that as anything but socialism. This really causes me to wonder whether or not you understand what you are doing at all. So now, given all of these things, you are under extreme scrutiny at every turn, and we are watching you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is the individual with the name KC. You could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm on my phone tonight.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, so last week, and I completely agree with what everyone else before me has said. I just want to, with my chicken scratch, kind of logically break down my deep issues with what you passed last week, specifically in regards to the Diversity Commission. It really bothered me that only 2 of you stood up against this. I think it was about 2, because it sounded that way. Couldn't tell because you're doing voice votes. It would be nice if we didn't do those, especially on Zoom. I would like to see and know who's voting for what. But all of you that did vote no for 11.08 should have voted no for the Diversity Commission. I don't understand. Why does it take a bunch of us to come and somewhat babysit? You should have a mind and a brain to think about things and think about consequences and think about goals of things that you're passing, because you don't even know the plan for this Diversity Commission. That is my first point. You do not know the plan. The UWO extension representative said that. We don't know the plan yet for this commission. That's bothersome. What is the purpose? We know it's for diversity, but my second point is, let's break down diversity. Diversity holds a truth that our skin color, our race, our sexuality, what we do in the bedroom is more important than our individuality as people. The quality of who we are as people. And I'm not talking about the quality based on skin color, that's racism. I am talking about who we are on the inside. I reject that. And that is why I reject the Diversity Commission. Because at the core of it, those ideas are what they hold true. That is a problem. My third point, it's bothersome. I really do feel like the others have said before me that this is a backdoor to health equity. I've looked up a little bit regarding health equity. Madison has a health equity commission, a board, and they had a diagram and they showed stick people with different, obviously, colors reaching toward apple trees. And on the apple trees, there was, on the first apple tree, there was one person with a certain skin color reaching for maybe an apple tree with only like 2 to 3 apples. The next person had a certain skin color. They were reaching for an apple tree with a little bit more. And the third person, different skin color, and they were reaching for obviously the apple tree with the most. And the goal of equity is to make it all even. What's funny is maybe they shouldn't have used apple trees, but how can you just fix that? An apple tree grows what it grows, and it is what it is. Honestly, equity is a farce. It goes against nature. It goes against, go outside and look at nature. Look at the birds, look at the flowers, look at the trees, look at the plants. They all have a purpose on their own. Equity erases that and forcibly tries to make everything equal. It takes away purpose, it takes away quality. That's socialism. That is why people are coming before you and saying this is socialism, because it's more government power, and it's forcing everybody to agree with you. And in the end, it's going to cost a lot more too. But what's disturbing the most, it's regarding our health, my body. And what's even more concerning is that the vaccine, when this all started, the vaccine, some of the scientists behind the vaccine even came out and said that COVID is attacking minorities. My concern is how that equity believes that racism is part of a virus. If I don't get the vaccine because I'm concerned about the safety of it, I'm somehow a racist now. And now we have a PHO officer who can go and has enforcement powers. And maybe someday he'll have enforcement powers to knock on a business or a home if they're accused of being a racist or because they didn't get the vaccine. That's my issues. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak this evening? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I'll say one last time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Okay, I'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda. We'll move on to reports from committees, commissions, and boards. I do see a couple of county supervisors who had comments, so I'll call on them first. Supervisor Lenz, followed by Supervisor Gordon. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lenz.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. I think it's right for us to thank the public that came out to speak. I didn't catch who KC was or which municipal they were from.
The individual KC, if you could please state your name.
It doesn't matter where she's from, doesn't matter. If you want to meet in person, then we can talk about who she is.
It's fine tomorrow. I am Katie Campbell. I live at 614 Wagoo Avenue in Winnebago County, Oshkosh.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Supervisor Gordon, followed by Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gordon.
Hi, I've been having some technical issues this evening. I just wanted to make sure that my attendance was taken.
Yes, very good. We do have you as attending. Thank you, Supervisor Gordon. Next speaker is Supervisor Fari, followed by Supervisor Deferding. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you well.
I don't have a report on any committees I'm on, but I do have a request of the Winnebago County Health Department specific to their website. As we all know, the state of Wisconsin has received vaccines to be administered throughout the state. I wonder if we can put the information that is pertinent to Winnebago County on a website, specifically how many doses we've received, what is the priority for administering those vaccines, etc. Can that be accomplished?
Well, actually, very good, Supervisor Fari. I guess I anticipated your question, to be honest, because I actually asked Public Health Director Doug Gearin a couple days ago to provide an update in regards to the vaccinations related to the county. And he did that, so we'll be forwarding that out to you. It includes some of that information you're looking for. So,
do you happen to know, as a doctor, how this is going to be administered? Different tiers, different groups. Do you happen to know what that criteria is?
So first of all, public health involvement isn't all of the involvement. What might seem confusing for folks is each different healthcare organization is getting their individual allotments as well, along with public health. So public health will be working with the community for those who are not necessarily part of a larger healthcare organization. I can tell you that they started vaccinating individuals at Parkview, my understanding is last week already. But I'll give you the specifics that I received from him. Like I said, he provided a written update. I asked for it just the other day, so I'll make sure I forward it to you. It includes some of your question. I want to make sure I don't say something that's inaccurate in terms of the public health department's involvement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Supervisor Defferting. Please go ahead, Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, great. I'm reporting in regards to the Winnebago County Connect program. The construction is finished, and I got to take a look at it myself, and got to take a look at some of the rooms that's being used. And we also brought in now it's the process of connecting to local nonprofits and local resources. And one of them that we set up a meeting for is Reach Counseling in Neenah. And Reach Counseling, just a FYI, they have a new executive director. It's the first new executive director that they've had in over 20 years. And her name is Kristen Trimberger, and she made she met up with District Attorney Christian Gossett, and to explain a little bit about what the Winnebago County Connect program does, where Reach Counseling can fit in it, where their strengths are, what they can bring to the table, and vice versa, what the district attorney can bring to the table for Reach Counseling too. And so this is all part of connecting local nonprofits and local resources to the criminal justice division, so we could lower incarceration and lower recidivism. So this is just one ingredient that we've added, and I'm looking forward to strengthening our connection to local resources, and I'm intending to continue doing that throughout the rest of my term here, is constantly connecting more local resources to the district attorney's office so we can work on this project together. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferting. Next speaker is Supervisor Gabbert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbert.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
I wanted to speak a little bit, and I'm not trying to override Chairman Ellis on this, but he was aware of this. I was able to find out last week that, as you had mentioned, that Parkview employees and residents were vaccinated with their first vaccination last week, Tuesday, I believe. Not everybody got vaccinated because some chose not to, but I guess it went very smoothly. And so I feel good about that those healthcare workers and our residents out there are getting some protection, hopefully when they get the second shot, and then the 2 week after that they're in good shape then. So that was most promising to me. And I have had contact with Doug Gurn at the health department on several issues, and he's been more than helpful answering my questions. So I agree with Supervisor Fari that we should have some kind of a little flagged site on their website, which is pretty good. I get the information every day from them, telling what is going on with the vaccinations in Winnebago County. But I was very pleased to hear about Parkview. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbert. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll close that portion of the evening. We'll move on to County Board Chairman's report. Pretty quick. Just want to remind everyone that we do have another meeting in January. So that would be Tuesday, January 19th at 6 p.m. Also wanted to let individuals know that we do not have a Board of Health meeting for this month. So there won't be one this Friday. The next tentative Board of Health meeting would be Friday, February 5th. And that's all for my report. So we'll move on to tonight's agenda in regards to presentations. There are 4 presentations this evening. There are no voting items this evening. The first one is the Highway Department 2021 Capital Improvement Projects presentation by our Highway Commissioner, Ray Polonin. So I'll call on Commissioner Polonin.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for listening to my presentation today. We have a very robust program plan for the coming year, and I will go through that. And then at the end, if there are any questions, I did receive a call today from Supervisor Eisen regarding progress on our current 2020 program that's currently was started this past year. So I can give an update on that as well for those projects. A great deal of planning goes into the capital improvement program for the highway department annually. It entails juggling budget restraints and funding opportunities with the needs of the highway system. The process starts early each spring for the highway department. I get started on this early because I really need to get an idea what is going to be planned for the coming year prior to doing the general budget, I guess. Because of my budget includes the revenues from our capital projects as well. So really, I do my entire budget for the most part early in the spring prior to the annual budget process. Once I get started with that, it's really a process that is refined and adjusted over the entire year, until a final version is presented to the county board, which I'm doing. Many of the projects are tied to future activities and often involve contracts and agreements that commit the county to complete the projects as well. Also, I wanted to mention that the finance director has included a draft table of the 2021 through 2025 capital improvement plan in your packets, and the final CIP book will be available by January 19th for the board meeting as well. State and federal requirements play a crucial role when projects can begin and when they must be completed. Projects with state and federal funding typically receive 80% to 90% of the cost of a project. So it's very beneficial for the county to pursue these funds because, as you can see, they pay the vast majority of the cost of these projects, which are, as you know, very costly. Between 2021 and 2025, I've been successful securing over $8 million from state and federal funding sources to be used on our highway improvements. Typically, roadway designs must be started within 1 year of being awarded the funding and must be completed within 6 years. So these are for projects that have state and federal funding. They have rules and requirements that have to be followed. On state and federally funded projects, some of you may not know this, but the Wisconsin Department of Transportation manages those projects from beginning to end to ensure federal requirements are met. Typically, it takes 4 years from the time we're awarded funding to when we have a completed project. Sometimes it takes a little longer. And that's primarily because of the federal requirements. The county is committed by written agreement to complete these funded projects. So when we are awarded the funding, we have to enter into a municipal agreement with the state of Wisconsin, who manages the funding for the federal government. If the county were to decide to not fulfill its commitments on a funded project, then the county would be responsible for 100% of the costs incurred up to that date. So it's very important when the decision's made to move forward with these projects that we complete them. Here's a summary of our funding for the coming year. And it also lists projected funding for the total 5-year program that we put together. Planning and design, there's $1.7 million anticipated for this coming year, this year, I should say. We have about $300,000 in land purchases. That's right-of-way acquisition for projects that are in design or nearing completion, but we'll be purchasing right-of-way in order to do the roadway construction or complete the roadway construction. And then we have $4.6 million anticipated in actual construction costs for the program. We have just over $2 million in outside funding, and finance has anticipated using general fund revenue for the remaining portion of our project needs. Here we have a list of highway projects that are planned at the next 3 slides. And I guess what I really wanted to focus on, and I'll go to the next one, is you'll see with all these projects, many of them are tied into projects that have, we've already started. So these projects actually take many years to complete, and there are different phases in these projects that have to be taken into consideration and funded. A good example of a funded project would be the County Highway P project right here. And you'll see in 2021, $780,000 planned. We'll be receiving $681,000 in federal funding. That's actually for the design phase. So the design will actually start this year. We have also an agreement with the City of Menasha and the Village of Fox Crossing, who are also going to be participating financially as well. So the design will start this year. It'll go into next year. And we're planning for right-of-way acquisition in 2023. And then finally, in 2024, there'll be time allowed for utility relocations until we finally get to construction in 2025. And there you'll see whether on this particular project, just over $5 million in funding between the state and federal government and the local partners. But I guess this primarily was, I wanted to show this to you so that you can see that these projects just aren't 1 year. Many of them go over many years. So. And then here are the remaining projects that are listed out in the last 5 years. I'll go through each individual project plan for 2021. The first one is County Highway T from Pioneer Road to County Highway II. We anticipate $100,000 this year, and then construction will actually take place in 2022. And you can see on the map the section of roadway, and what this section of roadway is Pioneer Road in the town of Clayton. What we're doing is, for this project, the county is going to take over jurisdiction of Pioneer Road and extend County Highway T up to County Highway II. It's currently being used as a county roadway as it is. Traffic is bypassing Larson, which is over here, and traveling up to II to get over to east and west locations on County Highway II. The town of Clayton has agreed to take over jurisdiction of the existing section of County T, when the projects are completed. They'll actually be doing some improvements in Larson, and then the county is going to actually repave this portion of T and turn it over to the town. Waukau Avenue from Obresny to the airport. This is a project the Highway Committee felt would be a good candidate for having designed. We don't have anything planned for construction at this point, but it's essentially a plan to be put on the shelf for when funding is appropriate and the roadway is ready. We'll have a plan ready so that when the time is right, we can pull those plans from the shelf, so to speak, and actually construct the project. The map of its location. Many of you may not know that this is actually under county highway jurisdiction. It's this section of roadway from here to here, the edge of the airport. County Highway CB from Shady Lane to American Drive. This will be a pavement maintenance project where we anticipate $300,000. What we plan to do on this project is profile, mill, and overlay the existing section of roadway. The pavement is in poor condition. It gets a lot of truck traffic. It hasn't been repaved in many, many years. So what we intend to do is just mill off the surface and resurface it. The County Highway CB and JJ Roundabout is a project that has already started in 2020. The design is nearly completed, and what you see planned for 2021, plan for 2021 is the final design phase and then also purchasing right-of-way. Construction is planned in 2022, and this project has $1 million, actually, just over $1 million in state funding. And we also have a cost sharing agreement with the city of Neenah, so they're also going to help pay for it. And here you see the location of that. Currently, this intersection is at a skew. That's this skewed angle that you see here. And there's a history of crashes at this intersection. The city of Neenah is actually going to extend Pendleton Road, which is this roadway here, up into the intersection. So that's why the roundabout was decided, which would function the most effectively at that location and reduce the accidents as well. County Highway I from Ripple Avenue to Waukau Avenue. This is a state and federally funded project beginning this year. We're anticipating $400,000 in design, which will be getting started soon. And again, this is one of those projects that the state DOT actually manages. The county really doesn't get too involved with it. I mean, I'm involved with it, along with state with the design portion of it, but the state actually manages the project. And the section that you see is from here to here. This is actually a project that was started, actually was awarded funding just over $1 million, I think about 5 or 6 years ago by my predecessor. And they found out after the project was, the design had already started, that the city of Oshkosh planned a sanitary project to install sanitary sewer through there, rather than install or reconstruct the roadway and have it torn up again when the city does their project. The funding was given back to the state, and I was successful to regain that funding or reacquire that funding. And I've been working with the city of Oshkosh to coordinate our activities so that we work our activities together so that we have a final project that is done at the same time. So they actually will complete their sanitary project along with our construction project. And they are also a cost participant in this project as well. County Highway G from State Highway 45 to M, anticipating $430,000. This project is a pavement maintenance project. You'll see highlighted here. simply going to pulverize the existing pavement and install a new asphalt pavement. The pavement is in deteriorated condition. County Highway II from CB to Clayton Avenue. Anticipating $665,000. Pavement maintenance project again. Highlighted here, simply going to profile mill or mill the existing asphalt surface and resurface the roadway. It has, the roadway is experiencing a lot of traffic, as you know, and it's rutting and has longitudinal cracking in the wheel paths. So it's not draining well, and water doesn't drain well from its surface, and we need to improve the surface on that roadway segment. In addition to our highway improvements, we're also planning on doing hoping to do some building improvements. As you know, or you may not know, but the highway building, the existing building itself, built in 1995, has had no improvements to it since that time. The building is now fully depreciated, and I spoke to the highway committee about this. They saw the need, but felt that maybe we should look at bringing on a architectural firm to do a conceptual drawing, along with some estimates, so that we have a better understanding of what costs we would be looking at. And I think that's a great idea. I talked to the facilities department, Mike Elder, about this. We met, went over the, the needs, and are hoping to have budgeted $20,000 this year to do that conceptual process. And finally, we have the phase 2 of our parking lot at the highway department. We did phase 1 this past summer. The remaining phase is to do the around the rest of the building. I would say we did probably 3/4 of the work last year. We have about 1/4 of the project left. And then also, in addition to that, we have to surface or pave the parking lot at the Winchester facility. That was never completed. It just has a chip seal, and needs the pavement to be installed where the trucks enter and leave the building. So that's all I had. I guess I'll open it up for any questions there might be.
Very good. We'll open it up for questions. I saw a number of call-ins.
Uh-oh, I think I lost them.
We're going to go ahead and switch screens here. If you can bear with us for about a minute here.
There we go.
Okay, we have 2 call-ins. First, I'll call on Supervisor Snyder, followed by Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ray, good presentation. On the tables that you delineated many of these projects on, near the bottom of the first page, the 4th one up from the bottom, is forecast for 2022. And it says from County Highway G, from County Highway T to County Highway M. I think it should just be to State Highway 45, correct?
Correct.
Because up at the second one from the top says from 45 to M. So,
yes, you're right.
Okay, great. And thank you for doing our roads. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Snyder. Next speaker is Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ray, a good presentation. I did have a couple of questions. The $8 million in funding that you received from state and federal locations, what's the time frame for that? Was that from all of 2020? Was that just this year, 2020, the first week of 2021? What's the time frame on that?
Time frame as far as when we receive it, or when we have to use it.
Well, no, you said you've managed to get $8 million in funding.
Yes.
Is that it for all of 2020, or was that it? All of that's. I'm just wondering. It doesn't seem like with the millions and millions that you've shown us of constructions, 8 million. While it's impressive, it doesn't cover all of the highway things you have in mind. I just wonder how much more funding or what it went for. What's the time frame that you raised that? Has it already been used?
Well, actually, the $8 million will be spread out over the next 5 years. And those projects, like I had indicated in my presentation on those state and federally funded projects, those projects, like I said, the design will start this year, and then the state will actually bill the highway department for our portion of it, our 20% of the cost of the project. Once the design is completed, then we move into right-of-way acquisition, and then finally construction. So some of these costs, and if you look on that table, the red numbers that you see on the table are actually the numbers that indicate funding. Our County Highway P project has the largest amount, and it has $5 million in state and federal funding, and that's programmed for 2025. So to answer your question, these funds are actually spread out over a 5-year period.
Okay. My second question was about the status of the roundabout in Neenah, where the young woman was killed in that accident at an intersection about 2 or 3 years ago, and what how far along is that project, and is it on schedule?
Actually, that project is completed. That was completed 2 years ago.
Okay.
Not this past summer, but the summer before.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Joas. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the Highway Commissioner, Ray, for his very good explanation of these multiple projects, that the outlook for completing projects is between 4 and 6 years. So when you see 16 projects designed for 2020, and you see many of them by September 1st are not completed, kind of wonder how are you going to put on another 12 projects on top of 12 projects that are still pending. My question, and I forwarded this information to the Highway Commissioner earlier today, is looking back at the 2020 highway projects, what is the status of those projects? We do get some updates from the Finance Department, and the latest one that I have retained was made a printout from the August 31st publication. Could you give us a rundown on where we are with those 2020 projects, and then I have an additional question about 21.
Sure, I'll just go down the list quickly. County Highway CB, Shady Lane to County Highway BB, that project is completed. County Highway CB and Oak Ridge Road roundabout, that project is completed. That's the roundabout that I was just asked about. But that one, again, that was state and federally funded, and the billing is always lagging with the state. Sometimes we get invoicing from the state, several years after the project is completed. So that's why you still see that on the list. The CB and JJ roundabout, again, that's one of those projects that is just in the design phase now and will be carrying on over the next year. and construction is planned for 2022. County Highway double F from 21 to 91, that was a pavement maintenance project that the highway department crews did. That one is completed as well.
That project was completed this past summer. There is a few minor things to do in the spring. Off the touch up the folders during the winter, but generally, overall, the project is complete. County Highway N from 26 to double F, that project was completed several years ago. County O from 41 to double I. That project is that's complete. I got it mixed up. The County Highway G from G to Winnebago Road project is complete.
That was a county maintenance project, pavement maintenance. The county R improvements, that should be done this week, actually. I think we're going to be finishing that up this week. County Highway T from double I to Grandview, that's actually the Pioneer Road project that's in design currently. With construction planned, not this summer, but the summer after, in 2023. County Y, from T to State Highway 41. That project is we have CDBG funds for, the design is completed, planning on construction this coming summer. And you have to understand, a lot of these projects, not all of them the highway department crews are doing. Many of them are either in the design phase or will be under a state bid letting with contractors doing. So when I put this program together, I have to balance all of those along with the workload for the highway department as well. So it's a juggling act and it's a balance. And a lot of time goes into balancing this program.
And is it your perspective, of course, that adding these additional programs in 2021 is not going to hinder the ongoing progress that we've been making? Because I seem to recall that Winnebago County had one of the highest ratings of their county roads in the state among the 72 counties. We were up there along with, I think, Ozaki, who's got zillions and billions of dollars in terms of highway excellence.
To answer your question, no, it won't hinder. I have to balance our own program with the workload that we do for the towns as well. They're very important to the highway department as well. So there's many different sources of workload that I have to take into consideration in addition to the workload on our highway system, but also what the township's needs are along with what the state's state DOT needs are on their system. So it is a very involved process, Supervisor Eisen, and that's why it takes an entire year to get this put together and to really think it through and properly.
Well, thank you for a very thorough explanation and continuing be able to juggle and balance all sections of the county because looking at the highways that are being serviced, you're going all the ways from the north to the south and east and west for a balanced approach,
yes,
keeping ahead of their use. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Joas, followed by Supervisor Buck. Please go ahead, Supervisor Joas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ray, I had a question regarding the Winchester parking lot project. Does that include any kind of overlay or any kind of surface maintenance on South Hanson Road between the driveways for the building there north to Double I? Just it gets quite a bit of very heavy traffic when, especially during the winter with the dump trucks full of salt and everything like that?
No, what I have planned is just strictly contained within the parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Joyce. Next speaker is Supervisor Buck, followed by Supervisor Bender. Please go ahead, Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ray. Supervisor Eisen kind of alluded to what I was going to ask, and maybe you've done this in the past, or it's in your capital improvement plan. But do we have a rating? You know, you hear a lot from the federal government that our roads and bridges are at a D- or something like that. Does the counties association give a rating, or does the state DOT give a rating to Winnebago County as far as where we rank, like Supervisor Eisen was getting at with the counties, or do they give us a specific grade, you know, for what shape our roads and bridges in? And do you have anything separate for roads and bridges, or just can you give an overview of where we're at, the shape of roads in Winnebago County? Thank you.
I believe the DOT through Whistler will give us an average. We rate our roadway pavements on a scale of 1 to 10. And I believe when I started here, Supervisor Eisen actually brought this up on my confirmation at the county board meeting. I believe it was around 5.6, I believe our rating was at the time, which is very good for the county. Personally, I think we're above that. I think we're much higher than that now with the work that we've been doing. But I can get that information and certainly share that with you.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. That's definitely a question that comes up time and time again with talking to constituents about what are the shape of our roads. You know, that's always a question that I get. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Supervisor Buck. Next speaker is Supervisor Bender, followed by Supervisor Finch. Please go ahead, Supervisor Bender.
I actually got a couple questions for you, Ray. On Double I there on that Pioneer project, there's a big hill there, just like there was on basically CB and Oak Ridge, where we had the fatality where we put the roundabout in. I can see that happening there. Is there a plan to cut that hill down?
Yes, there is. Part of that project will involve lowering that hill to improve the visibility at that intersection.
That'd be good. Then I'd be for that project. And another thing is, you know, when you do the building, modernizing it, that building needs a truck wash. I mean, the city of Oshkosh has a bus wash. They got a truck wash. You know, you're spending upwards of $370,000 on these dump trucks, and that wash bay you got there, you can't even hardly get a double wing truck in there. I mean, I drove them in there. You got to drop the wings down to get them in. It's really not convenient. And at the price of this equipment, and now you have to keep that equipment around 15 to 17 years, you know, I would say that's one of the biggest things that you need there is something so that you get the underbodies of those trucks clean, because what you have is a wand going underneath there. It really isn't doing the job. And Wapaka built a new building. They got a truck wash. It's like you have millions of dollars worth of equipment, and we really need to basically make sure it's clean so the salt don't deteriorate it. And we end up with a bunch of rusted out oil pans, and you know what I mean.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Supervisor Bender. Salt, you know, our trucks are probably used in the worst conditions possible. And the salt is very corrosive on our equipment, and it deteriorates them quickly. And we need to make sure that they're well maintained and cleaned to reduce that corrosion that we do experience. So yes, I would like to include a truck wash if the county board would be supportive of funding that portion. I would certainly like to do that, because that would certainly go a long way in maintaining our fleet.
Yes, and I actually think it would pay for itself in the long run. I mean, because the manpower you have to spend in there to wash those trucks, you know, the next day you just run them through there. You know, one guy can basically probably wash your whole fleet in a day. And even for the rest of the county vehicles, if it's not being used, I'm sure you could wash some of their vehicles. So it would basically maybe help pay for itself that way. But I mean, that's something that I think is a necessity, and I would be all for seeing that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. Next speaker is Supervisor Finch. Please go ahead, Supervisor Finch.
No, he's muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I want to say is, Ray, you gave a fantastic presentation. It really helped me to learn more. And I just want to say, you know, you always catch the hell on your garbage, but you never get the accolades. And you did a real good, what are you laughing at? You did a real good job on your presentation. And if I can get some people to go along with me, I have no problem have a resolution on taking care of your car wash, truck wash. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Thank you very much, Highway Commissioner Polonen, for providing that presentation and information. Very, very helpful and insightful. So thank you again. So we'll move on down to the next presentation this evening. There's actually two for Vicky Redland. The first one is a presentation of Phase 1 Sunnyview Expo Center East Campus infrastructure improvements. And then that'll follow up by the presentation on purchase of field and trail mower for the Parks Department. I'll call on Acting Parks Director Vicky Redland.
Hello, happy New Year to everyone. I have this presentation is the second time we'll be putting this in front of you. The first one was exactly 1 year ago today for the January special orders meeting in 2020. A lot has happened since then, obviously. And so the project that we had presented then, we have scaled it back due to, of course, the uncertain circumstances that we're going through. We have basically pared it to the essentials. We do have some pretty significant drainage problems at the expo grounds. And being that there are so many events that are itching to take place again as soon as they possibly can, we really like to be able to accommodate that and keep that economic engine for tourism going. So I have a couple people here with me, the Expo Operations Supervisor, Rick Helms, our consultant, Chase Rettler from Rettler Corp, and Tom McGinnis will be doing the presentation on the mower at the end of this one. So if I can share my screen, I will show you a pared down presentation of what we had done in the past here. Okay. Last year at this time, this was the presentation that we had. This is a map of what is currently on the grounds, just to give you a little idea of where we are. The section that we're looking at right now is this section here. Obviously, the main lot is here, and the section on to the east of that, we need to do some major repair and expansion there. We do have a lot of issues. It's been going on for a long time. Basically, that area is flat. There is not much pitch at all. So we have a lot of standing water, and that can be dangerous. It's not just for us going in and out of there. It's the pooling, the puddling, the flooding. It can all lead to the public who is coming to view these events and to participate in them. It can be a serious issue. So, oops, got to go back one here. Hold on. All right, I'll start over. Technical difficulties. Okay, now that I got that figured out. As I was saying, danger, high water, yes, we definitely do that. The next phase of it is basically showing what we have, some of the problems, and I will turn that over to Rick, as he is the person who is on the grounds when these things are happening, and he can give you a little bit of an overview of what you're looking at here. So Rick Helms.
Hello, everybody. As you can see, there are several pictures here that depict different areas of the grounds and the conditions that will happen during the different events depending on the weather conditions. You can see in that upper left corner, that's supposed to be a camping road, which is, obviously covered in mud, makes it a bit difficult to get through. It's unsafe for the vehicles and pedestrians in the area. And then of course you have to worry about the repairs after the fact, which can get pretty expensive. And then you have a unsightly facility for the next event, which is usually a couple days after the last one. So it really does take time to fix this stuff when we do have these things happen. So we're trying to alleviate some of that stuff. You can see in the second center picture in the top row, we have a electrical transformer that is sitting in water. Again, that's pretty much a safety issue and something that happens quite frequently over by the horse barns there. The far right on the top row, that picture is of the parking lot. That's the lot 2 on the south side of the covered arena. The grass gets used quite a bit for parking as the parking lot's too small. That grass area stays pretty wet as well. There is a retention pond a little further over, not seen in the picture there. If you look at the bottom left picture, that's what we call the swamp. That's the County Road Y right out in front there. And that's right next to the main entrance on the west-hand side. That area is, the picture is actually pretty small compared to what it typically looks like after a rain event, and makes probably a quarter of that front field unusable for days after the event. The bottom center picture, that was supposed to be a camping area. Obviously we had to relocate a lot of campers, and that really creates problems when you have a full facility. And again, on the next photo over, it's just another picture of the same thing. We have water problems throughout the facility because of the lack of drainage and the flatness of the ground.
So what we're looking at is, this is not just an expo problem. The way the drainage runs is it goes from the expo site under some teeny tiny culverts under County Road Y, and then it empties out into the park. So when we have a rain event, because we don't have the ability to retain or detain as much water as we'd like, this is some of the things that happen on the park side as well. So the dog park gets a flooding in it, the ball diamonds have issues, and at the main entrance on the opposite side, we have a mini swamp, which can hold the water for a very long time. So it's not just one side of the road, it goes on to both sides of the road. What we're looking at, the things that we would like to do, that we need to do in order to make this problem go away, is, some of the expansion, the detention, retention. We need some hard surfacing. We need some additional walkways where people aren't traipsing over wet soil. So we do have the plan, the updated plan, and I will turn that over to Chase Rutler, and he will tell you what we're doing, the plan for phase 1. So take it away, Chase.
Chase Redler, you have the floor.
Good evening, everybody. Just verify you have my audio.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. As Vicky said, my name is Chase Rutler. I'm a civil engineer with Rutler Corporation out of Stevens Point. We've been working with Rob, Vicky, Rick, and Tom for about the past 2.5 years now at looking at the existing condition of the Expo Center. Obviously, last year I was also part of the presentation for potential improvements at the Expo Center. And I worked with Rob, Vicky, Rick, and Tom at trying to pare those improvements back this year, looking at cost and really maximize the improvements to the site for the cost, specifically related to adding parking needed during events, maximizing the efficiency of the drainage on site through adding retention and detention facilities south of the area shown as phase 1 on the graphic on your screen. And then also looking at the existing electrical facilities on site, which are somewhat antiquated and are looking at being improved as part of this process. So in general, if you're looking at the graphic, the large improvements proposed as part of this phase 1 are lots 2, which is a expanded gravel lot just east of the existing main entrance, south of the equestrian barn area. That lot would be able to hold 44 trailered vehicles with an additional 133 car spaces, so pretty large, or during concert events, roughly 270 cars, or not necessarily concert events, any type of events that are non-equestrian. Lot 3, the lot to the east of lot 2, the proposed lot there, again, a gravel lot, would be able to hold 57 trailers with 224 cars, or if trailers are not there, that lot would be able to hold about 380 cars. The last proposed parking expansion is lot 4, which is directly south of the open air equestrian facility. That lot exists now, but what we are proposing is to expand that, and as part of that expansion also provide stormwater improvements, and that would be able to hold roughly 45 full-size trailers for events. I do want to highlight, in looking at these proposed lot expansions, lot 2, 3, and 4, looking at the existing soil conditions on site. You know, a lot of you are familiar with building in the area. The soils are challenging. The cost estimates do include a very strong gravel profile at about 12 inches that will be able to hold up to trailers, as well as it anticipates some poor soil corrections. And what that means is bringing in suitable soil to replace poor soils that are currently on site underneath that pavement. These estimates also include site lighting throughout all of the proposed parking additions. And then I do want to highlight these estimates, these cost estimates also include power for parking during all of these events for trailers. So we would have roughly, for every 3 stalls, parking stalls, trailer parking stalls, you would have a pedestal with power available for those parking areas. And just to highlight one more time, you know, we're looking at parking expansion, but as part of that, the stormwater improvements throughout the site are being thought of as these parking expansions are being undertaken, kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. 2 other small improvements as part of phase 1 would be improving the road connection between lot 4 and the 11-acre parking area to the east of lot 4, and also a new road connection through somewhat of a berm into the new Netzer property. Vicky, is there anything that I missed as part of phase 1?
No, mainly what we're looking at is we need to get some more hard surface camping for the horse shows, which are numerous and which provide a lot of our revenue. But also at some point, we are going to have to replace the main asphalt lot, which has failed. It isn't even on a Panzer scale anymore. It's that bad. So we're looking at somewhere to put people that are coming to events in the expo building and elsewhere while that lot is being done, which could potentially take up an entire season. So we need hard surface, and that's what these lots will also be able to work double duty as parking throughout the year. We can plow them if we need to, and then camping for the horse shows.
Okay. As I alluded to, costs were assembled for all of these projects. I do want to highlight the numbers that you see here do include contingency for these projects, as well as any soft costs, design, permitting, wetland delineations, all of those things are included. So this would be a all-inclusive cost for all of these improvements. As I mentioned, lot 2, which is directly east of the main entrance, that proposed lot would be roughly $335,000, including a gravel surface, anticipated potential soil corrections, site lighting, and stormwater improvements. Lot 3 is similar scope at roughly $494,000. Lot 4, just south of the covered arena, would be roughly $206,000. As I mentioned earlier, this project would also include quite a bit of electrical updating as well as expansion. That improvement is anticipated at roughly $274,000. And then the two small access drives, the first being into the Netzer area east of the Expo Center, is roughly $40,000, as well as the drive entrance to the 11-acre area. One item that came up with Rick during this master plan process was looking at security, specifically looking at surveillance throughout the park. And that was added to this recently at about $140,000. And I do just want to highlight the last line item here is for a wetland delineation, and that's something that would be required for this project to move forward into design, is to have a delineation done on all of the areas that are proposed to be improved.
Okay, that's our presentation. If anyone has any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions from any county supervisor. I see a number of call-ins. So first I will call on Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Lautenschlager. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation. Just to mention that a couple things that we would need to see moving forward is a good update on the business plan to show us how the improvements at the Expo Center are going to work out financially for the county. And then the other thing that I've not seen or heard so far, and I talked about this once before, is that we should be having some connection with the state DNR, and there are several funds available for park improvements and wetlands and all sorts of things. So, and if we need to get help, you know, with someone who knows what they're doing in terms of major grants for a project like this, I think, especially looking at the master plan, I think that is an absolute necessity for moving forward on this type of project. I think we're going to have a hard time justifying expense from just horse shows and those kinds of things. So I think the financial challenge here is great. And we need to go into this with our eyes open and also being very smart about funding that perhaps is available to us.
So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker, Supervisor Lautenschlager, followed by Supervisor Borchert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lautenschlager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicky, kind of going on Supervisor Shorsey's little thing here. This area is very important to us because, like you said, we have numerous horse shows. Can you tell us approximately how many horse shows we have on an average year, and if you have some kind of a cost of what those horse shows are bringing in, or what percentage of the horse shows are compared to the other activities there at the Expo Center?
I can certainly do that. Horse shows are our main source of revenue. A large horse show, normally those are 3 to 4 days, and they can bring in rental fees alone, about $18,000. Normally we have a horse show just about every weekend with the exception of Life Fest and the fair. There's usually 1 or 2 dates open in June. However, with what's been happening elsewhere, I have people calling me already for some of the dates that we have had open previously. So on a normal year, we probably have 10 to 12 horse shows. We have one coming in this year that you approved the contract last year for. This is a 5-year state show for the Wisconsin Futurity Horse Show, which is huge. And they are coming here. But this year, of course, would have been their first year. They did not have the event here. So that one is in itself, I believe that entire contract is around $60,000. Now that is not including any of the profits that we get from our sponsorship with Pepsi for beverage sales, which can be significant. When you compare what the horse shows bring in to what we get from, say, an event at the Expo building, because we have those year round. The horse shows, because the facilities that they use are not a real high maintenance item. We do have a lot of what we put in there is profit. So the horse shows are our bread and butter, and we know that they are going to be coming here for a long time. They love the facility. They have been calling for, areas where they can get more campers in, because the more revenue they make through their camping people and people that are participating, the longer they can stay and add days. So this project, when it was put in for the covered arena, it was an awesome thing. It was a huge success. So going forward, we're building on that. And like I said, they definitely are our highest source of revenue.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Thank you, Supervisor Lautenschlager. Next speaker is Supervisor Borchert, followed by Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Borchert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have is for Vicky. Is the cost for the electrical, does that include power company charges for electricity and gas, or just for our own equipment that we're putting in?
It's basically just for our own equipment, some new lighting and some pedestals for plugins. We don't have gas anywhere on the facility except for into the Expo building. So yeah, it would be just that.
You may want to check into that a little bit. That could be quite staggering what the power company's going to charge.
Rick, I believe, has been in contact with them, and they have come and walk the grounds. So I'm pretty confident in what our numbers are, because we've dealt with Rutler for quite some time. But yeah, right now we're not looking at doing a real lot. We already do have some out there. It's just mainly an expansion of what's already there.
For the camping, for the trailers, that's something you don't have already. That's going to be a separate entity in itself. Then you have lighting, and then you have your distribution to the horse trailers, which, depending what size you go with, it's going to be a wide opening your eyes a little bit on that. Horses cost money.
Oh, they sure do.
They
I can
do.
answer that a little bit. The lot 2 has camping in it now, so there is a separate transformer that sits on the southeast corner of that lot. That transformer, I believe, has to be upsized a little bit, but it's not bad as far as price exchange. Lot 4 next to the covered arena already has a transformer there that can be tapped into. If I recall, that one does not need to be upgraded. So the only new electric service going in is going to be on lot 3, and that has been accounted for by Rutler Corporation. So the
Correct.
numbers are pretty fairly accurate.
Correct, and I just want to reiterate, during the planning process, Rick did coordinate with the local utility, and it was reviewed during the planning process and included.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Borchert. Next speaker is Supervisor Fari, followed by Supervisor Bender. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
There we go. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we can hear you well.
My question is for Mr. Rettler, is it pronounced? The presentation started with a demonstration of flooding on the property. What you're proposing is a substantially more impervious surface on that property, which is going to make the flooding much worse. So the question is, in this concept that's being presented, phase 1, do you have retention ponds to address that flooding? It wasn't mentioned previously.
Yep, correct. So as part of the planning process, a combination of retention and detention, based on the level of the water, has been planned for the new impervious, and then also trying to remedy some of the existing issues and creating additional volume for stormwater storage. So yeah, to answer that question, there's a multiplier more or less for the proposed additional impervious, and that has been taken into effect. If you look at the graphic, there's pond areas south of the proposed lots. Those blue areas are designated as stormwater treatment.
Is that going to be presented in more detail as we go forward? In other words, the size of the retention area, the depth of the ponds, capacity, etc.?
It could be. I guess at this point during the planning process, again, it's somewhat of a multiplier based on the known poor condition of your soils, and we know that there's not a tremendous amount of water that infiltrates into the ground. We need to provide a significant volume for that stormwater runoff to be detained. And that has been factored into the planning process, and specifically the cost estimate in looking at providing wet ponds and fountains for aeration or aerifiers in those ponds. That's all been considered as part of the planning.
Where would the ponds be located? Would that be in the park itself, south of the Expo Center?
Correct, and I apologize. I don't think the presentation is up anymore, but if you look in your packet, there was a slide that showed the phase 1 proposed improvements. Any of the blue areas near those proposed parking lots, those are all stormwater treatment wet ponds.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that in more detail as we go forward. Obviously, if you're going to, and I understand the need to improve the property, but also that needs to be coupled with these retention ponds to correct the flooding issue, which was quite clearly demonstrated.
Absolutely. And as part of that too, obviously any review will be taking place by both the DNR as well as the city of Oshkosh, who has a great interest obviously in regional stormwater and making sure that as these additional impervious areas are added, we're not making any of those downstream of the facility worse off.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. I'll next call on Supervisor Bender, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Bender.
Another one of the advantages of doing that project this year is they're going to crush the terminal. So we'll have a huge pile of gravel, which I'm understanding that the highway department is getting, but we also can take gravel from that pile. So basically we're going to save the county. Otherwise they'd have to truck all that concrete to Outagamie County and pay the dumping fees. That gravel is going to be crushed. There's going to be a big pile for the highway department to use. There's going to be plenty there for us to use. So we're going to actually save the county money, and we're going to get the gravel for those roads and parking lots at a reduced cost. So there is an advantage to doing it this year. I mean, once the gravel's gone, we'll have to buy it from a quarry, and basically it's going to cost a lot more money. So we have the means to getting rid of that terminal, actually recycling it instead of just basically wasting it. And we can build the roads and the parking lots. They can be the part of our base. And by digging the roads, we're going to get some good topsoil, so we can basically fill in some of the low areas. So I think if we're going to do it, this is the year to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, what is the timeline that is for completion of this $2.2 million project that was proposed last year? And it seems to me when you're proposing retention ponds and you're proposing gravel servicing and you're anticipating horse shows, I don't know if you're going to be able to get the job done in 1 year. I know it was asked to be bonded and completed for last year, for 2020, and it's here again now in 2021. What's the design phase? Are you going to put it in sections, or are you just going to get it through this year? It might not be a bad year to do it because interest rates are low and the public activity, event activity is slow.
Well, I can answer that. We are planning on doing this all at once. From what we've looked at as far as timelines, we've talked to the highway department since they do a lot of this. And really, for what we need to have done, we can shift that area and use the hard surfacing of the main lot if we need to, so that we will be able to continue operation throughout the project. So when the last we had discussed, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but it was around a 2-week time frame, depending upon getting the supplies on site. Once we have, the electrical's got to come first. And then once that's done and we're starting to fill in, it goes pretty quickly. So right now we have areas that we can put those people. And our season runs from Memorial Day through the last weekend in September. So October, November is when we usually do most of our projects, just because when you're getting into April, we don't know what the weather's going to be like. We've had some very, very, very wet Aprils. So we would be looking at doing this as a fall project. And usually we can go into November quite easily. And at that time, our outside grounds will be closed. So they could pretty much be there 24/7 if they needed to.
Well, if you were depending upon the highway department to help out in that project, they've got a pretty full plate. So I don't know if they could fit you into their schedule.
We have talked to them about it. This would probably be something that would be bid out. If they have the time, awesome. But as of right now, we don't have plans for them exclusively to use it. I have not talked to Ray specifically on doing it this fall if they have the ability. But they did give us some good estimates as far as the time frame would go in construction of it.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vicky, can you give us an idea of what the competition, meaning what other parks systems, both county and city, are doing? I mean, Brown County is prepared to have a major multi-million-dollar upgrade to their expo center. They are also going to have a $3 million project to install a boat launch. And I know that the Grand Chute are having a major project to have a major athletic facility for softball and baseball and soccer. And my point is, you know, these quote unquote, these aren't just horse shows. These will bring people from out of town to this community on weekends where the money will be made. So I guess that give me an idea on the rest of the board, what is our competition doing? Because if we don't do these improvements, then they're going to go to other areas that have these improvements. Thank you.
Sure. Our main competition, because we are the only covered equine facility north of Madison, is Dane County. We also have Jefferson County. Jefferson County is talking about, and they have been for a couple of years, building their own covered facility. One of the main things that we have to look at when we're pricing our facility for rental is what they are getting for their dollar. And Dane County is still higher than us. However, they offer a lot more than what we're offering for the same dollar. They have staff year round, they have hard service everywhere, they have all kinds of electrical. So really, you know, people are willing to pay the price to come to our facility, mainly because of the atmosphere. They like the people that are here in Oshkosh. They like coming to Winnebago County and doing other things outside. They like the country atmosphere that we have with you know, the trees and the grass and not having asphalt all over the place. But yeah, as Mike said, there are quite a few other areas right now that are looking at expansion, and a lot of that is coming from the effects of what COVID had nationally on parks in general, is that there's much more emphasis on outdoor recreation now, and you know, parks were deemed essential. So people are coming to these areas to do their recreation, to do their socializing. So yes, it is something that is right now is a lot of people are taking that into consideration, and they're putting in projects. So for us, this is a long time coming. We do have, you know, we've always had these drainage issues. So really, at the same time, to add what we need so that we can continue with our phases right now, as Mr. Bender said, you know, if we have some of those supplies that are readily at hand, and because things are slower right now, if we can get this in, we have nowhere to go but up.
And could we not look at maybe getting more activity, tournaments, whatever, on the weekends on the park side? I mean, and at the softball diamonds and maybe at the soccer fields. I know there's been talk for a number of years to have some type of a sports facility in this area. It's never happened. I've advocated for Rob for years for trying to do something, because I tell you, when you get groups of people from all around the Midwest and this state for weekends to come to your area and fill up your hotels and your restaurants and that's where the moneymakers. That's why I believe Grand Chute in that area doing this project. So that's what I hope we would do if we made these improvements too. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. I'll next call on Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one more question, and this one is for Chase. I know that some of the engineering companies that work with parks development have relationships at the state level to, you know, to help access grant funding. And does your company usually participate in this way, or do you rely on the clients to handle that themselves?
So yeah, we definitely in the past on numerous projects have worked with clients. It's a cooperative process. It's not a process where we as a consultant 100% go out and do it, but it you know, we have assisted numerous municipalities in going out and trying to acquire DNR, specifically DNR funding.
Yeah.
And it's a process that we're familiar with.
And that I look at it from a design perspective, you know, designing, taking advantage where it's appropriate with those things, where those grant funding opportunities are already out there. You know, so it's kind of a strategic design perspective. So, but what I'm hearing from you is, yes, you do work with clients if they are interested in pursuing that funding.
Absolutely. And, you know, the other thing to highlight is you have a DNR facility right across the road, actually in the same building as the county parks department. So, you know, there's a potential partner there. We've, you know, early on in the planning process, we've communicated with the DNR knowing that, you know, there's potential wetlands on site, just to get it on their radar ahead of time. So I think there is definitely a potential to partner with the DNR somewhat and try to go out and get some of those grants.
Great, great. And I think it would be good to do that early on and get them even bought in with the bigger project from that perspective.
Correct. Okay. And that is typically a pretty long lead time item, acquiring those grants.
Right, I understand that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Finch. Please go ahead, Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to say thank you, Vicky. You've done a superb job. I've been working with you for many years, but to come up with this, and I mean, I'm totally excited about it for you. And I am hoping everybody goes along with it. And I think we'll do good for Winnebago County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the second presentation. We'll move on to the third presentation. That's also from the Parks Department. It's a presentation on purchase of field and trail mower for the Parks Department. Once again, call on Acting Parks Director Redland. Please go ahead, Acting Director Redland.
Okay, I just need to get to the right slide here, and then can you see the slides there?
Yes, we can see them.
Okay. Get bigger. All right. Tom McGinnis is standing by to explain what we're looking at here with the field and trail mower and where we're going to use it and all that good stuff. So, Tom, if you want to chime in here.
Okay, thank you. My name's Tom McGinnis. I'm the Parks Manager. This is a project that we've been having in the queue for a while, and we're looking to purchase approximately 100 horsepower tractor. And on that tractor will be mounted a rear flail and a side flail, and it'll be a cab enclosed unit. It's very similar, if not identical, to what the highway uses to do most of their highway ditching, and also what the landfill does on their on the landfill areas there at the Sunnyview site. The cost is approximately $180,000. That's because we do not have a trade-in. Currently, we have a 1970s Massey Ferguson tractor, and it's way too small for this. It's only about 30 horsepower. The reason why we're looking for this, and Vicky, you can probably go to the next slide. That's just details about the tractor.
Okay.
But the reason why we're looking for this is we have over about 23 miles worth of trails, and that's two sides, so 46 miles worth of mowing that we have to do. And currently, we use trail mowers, our older trail mowers that we don't want to beat up. And with a lot of work from the highway department, we've been able to keep them up and running, but they're not suitable to have a front mower deck to go mowing in some of these ditches on the trails. And then also we've acquired quite a few prairie lands, grasslands, and some other areas that we want to just mow. The reason why we mow this area is, number one reason is the health condition of these prairies and of the grassland areas and even our fields areas, is we found that mowing them on a regular basis, at least once a year, maybe twice a year in some other areas, that we can really control the invasive species. And that's probably the number one thing. We can keep the grass as a native grass of what we planted in the flowering versus the buckthorn. We have wild parsnips is coming in on the trail. We're starting to get hogweed. Some people call it cow parsnips. And we found especially with the wild parsnips, if we mow it exactly the right time, and we only have a 3-week window there, we can get rid of it without chemicals. And to me, that's been our stride, because the amount of chemicals that we would have to use in our department for that would be probably a little bit too much. I'd feel comfortable in treating any of my staff members with. And we found it's fairly effective, but the mowers we have right now do not work for that. Now, in the past, we have been able to borrow the highway mowers to do some of this work, but even 6 years ago, when I started with the parks 7 years ago, they told us that this wasn't going to be a solution and we could only use it when it was available. Well, the highway department now has done considerably more mowing, and when they take their mowers out in June, that's it. We don't have a shot to use them until they're shut down. So what we're looking for is a mower that we can use on demand. We'll use it in the spring. We'll use it extensively in the summer. And then in the fall, we'll be able to clean up in the areas. And it's not only used in the parks, it's used in the trails, the parks, the expo. Rick and the expo has quite a few sites that he would like to see mowed on a regular basis. We have the new Netzer property, and we have various wetlands, including Kenny Roble. So that is what we're looking for. And then also the highway department has been very good for helping us out, but it's time that they said that we should go and look at getting our own mower for that, because they're not as able to help us as they used to in the past. So on the slide there, I don't know, it was on the earlier, Vicky, if you can go back to the regular mower on slide 9 there. Yeah, so it's a standard mower like this with that wing. And the wing is really helpful cutting down the ditches, especially on the Weewash Trail, the Mascouten Trail. The trails this year have been used way more than we ever have, and that was probably because of COVID, but I think more and more people are discovering them. And we've been able to do a really good job in maintaining them, but the invasive species, especially the buckthorn and the wild parsnips, is becoming an issue. And this is our solution, along with some other areas, to take care of that. So I'm open to any questions that anyone may have.
Very good. We'll open it up for questions from anyone. I see one. First, I'll call on Supervisor Gabbert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbert.
I just have a couple questions for you, Tom.
Sure.
Do you have a place to store this new mower?
Yes, we have an implement barn. Part of it is probably from the original Poor Farm that we still use parts of that. That's where our primary spot for this particular trailer, this tractor would go.
Okay, and then my second, yes.
And then we have a secondary one trailer, but we're trying to use that implement barn wherever we can.
Okay, my second question is, you were discussing buckthorn, and I use the Weewash Trail quite a bit. So buckthorn, as I know, you have to get it, you have to actually play on words here, nip it in the bud, so that you can, and that mower will take care of it at an early stage. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That you can cut it and it'll come back, and if you keep cutting it every year, eventually it gives up. But we're looking at small stuff. We're looking at stuff smaller than, say, this mower could maybe take an inch and a half tops. We're not looking at anything brush mower. You know, we would have the highway come in with their flail mower, but we're at the stage now that we can keep this cut and keep that small diameter, you know, think of your thumb size down pretty easily with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbert. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Bender. Please go ahead, Supervisor Bender.
I just want to say, like, one of the big advantages as the Parks Department having that is when you get a rainy day, it's an ideal day to go out there and cut brush, you know, so you can send a guy out there, and the trail should be cut both sides at least once a year. If you look at the side of a road like the townships, if they don't cut that basically quite regularly, you'll see they have to go out there with chainsaws and they cut all that brush out of there, and it's quite costly. You know, you can spend $40,000 just clearing one side of a road pretty fast. So it's essential for the parks to be able to maintain those trails and cut at least once a year. And they are basically, they get a lot of abuse. I mean, you're going through a ditch, there's basically rocks. So you don't want to, you know, like people, the landfill bought a used mower from the highway department, and it didn't take them long to figure out that that really wasn't a good idea, because a couple years later they bought a new mower. And it's the same with the Parks Department. If we would look for a used mower, all that's going to happen is it's going to be nothing but problems, and it's going to be broke down, and we'll spend more money and time fixing that mower than if we have our own mower to start with. We start with something good. If you maintain it, you know, when you come out in the spring, that mower is ready to basically cut the trails, and you don't have to rely on something that somebody else deemed unreliable. That's why they got rid of it. So it's essential for us to get this piece of equipment so that we can maintain the trails for the citizens of Winnebago County that grown to expect that high level of standard of nice trails where they can take their horse and they can walk and bike. And I think we owe it to the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. Next speaker is Vice Chairman Egan. Please go ahead, Vice Chairman Egan.
I'm not getting video here, audio.
Please go ahead, Vice Chairman Egan.
You can hear me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, would you need to go ahead and have a brand new 100 horsepower tractor? I can understand the mower parts.
Well, the mower parts, yes. I mean, if we could find a decent tractor that had the suitable hours that, I mean, I would ask the highway department to sign off on it, but I mean, whether it's used, as long as it's gently used, you know, if it was a tractor used in a field, that's one thing. If it's just somebody's hand-me-down from doing the same thing we've been doing for 10 years, it's probably not a good idea.
And the other question I have is, would you be using this for something else like pushing snow in the winter or anything?
Currently, no. We would have some large snow equipment now. This tractor would be set up strictly for mowing from, well, we would use it in the winter in some areas where some of the prairies would be frozen, where we could get in where it's normally swamp. And the park and the expo would be perfect examples of that. So we would keep it set up as a mowing unit, and we'd be able to use it on the shoulders of winter, maybe not dead of winter, but after the grounds have frozen. And we've done that in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Next, we'll call on Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question in regard to the size of the fail mowers. Can you tell me what the width of them are?
I don't.
These are fail mowers, correct?
Correct. I don't exactly have the exact specifications on that, but they're similar to what the highway is. It's probably out in the rear is probably looking to be like a 96 to 100 inch mower, and the wing would probably be closer to the 84 inch or 7 foot.
And you're running them at both same time?
Yes, with that 100 horsepower, you could run them both at the same time.
Well, I run a fail mower on a 80 horse New Holland, and it's about an 8 foot mower. I suggest that maybe 100 horse should be increased to 120, 140 horse. At 100 horse, you're going to be really taxing this, I would think. So if you could upgrade the horsepower, it might be beneficial long term to the operation of that tractor.
And we did have a range between 100 to 120 is on the thing. That would depend on the actual mower. Some of the mowers, if we would get a smaller mower that was suitable, then we could probably downgrade. I think the right now the landfill has 100 horsepower or maybe 105-ish.
Okay, just a suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude that presentation. Just want to say thank you to Acting Director Redlin, all the park staff for their involvement this evening, as well as Mr. Rettler from the Rettler Corporation. Thank you all for joining us this evening for the presentation and all the information, answering all the questions. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks again. Thank
you.
So we have one final presentation this evening. That's an update on the CARES Act monies and COVID routes to recovery grant from our finance director, Vicky Fitzgerald. Director Fitzgerald, you have the floor. Director Fitzgerald.
There we go. Thank you very much, Chairman Ramos. I'm going to share the screen with my presentation now. So let me know when you can see that. Are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, we can see it well now.
Okay, wonderful. All right. This evening I was asked to give a presentation about the Routes to Recovery grant that we received here at Winnebago County. Just to start off, I'd like to give a recap of what the Routes to Recovery grant was. First off, the state of Wisconsin received $200 million for the Routes to Recovery grant, which was funded by the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, otherwise known as the CARES Act. And that was received around March. With that $200 million, $190 million of this was allocated proportionately to every county, city, town, and village in Wisconsin based on their populations. The remaining $10 million of those $200 million grant was provided for Wisconsin tribal partners. So originally in March, we were notified that we were eligible for this grant, and we were allocated up to $2.773 million for reimbursements of eligible expenditures incurred due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, and it had to be for expenditures between March 1st and November 6th, 2020. We didn't just receive this lump sum, we had to have submitted eligible expenditures in 3 different reporting periods in order to receive the monies, and only if we had spent the money and had eligible expenditures. As a reminder, we had 9 expenditure categories that we could submit on. The first was a very broad category. It was emergency operations, activities, and services that were related to public health, emergency services, and public safety response. The second category was for medical and protective services and equipment, including the PPE, so such as masks and gloves and so forth. The third was cleaning, sanitizing, and other costs of COVID-19 mitigation in the public areas and facilities. This included a lot of the social distancing equipment we bought, the plexiglass to go in between the clerk and the actual customers that came in and the public. The fourth was temporary isolation housing for infected or at-risk individuals. And that was through public health, with having the special housing at the hotels for those that were infected. Next was testing and contact tracing costs above those that were covered by other existing state programs. Next, and continuing, is the sixth one, paid leave for public health and safety employees to take the COVID-19 precautions. Seventh category was increased workers' compensation costs that we would have due to COVID-19. Number 8 was meeting local match requirements for expenses submitted by reimbursement by FEMA to the full extent that was permitted by federal law. And emergency management already has to match for FEMA grants, so we did not use that category. And whoops, and I just did sorry about that. There we go. And then the 9th category, which we really got a lot of reimbursement for, was purchases of services or equipment to facilitate telework by public employees, meaning equipment and so forth to be able to work from home, including Zoom, subscriptions and so forth. So there were some changes along the way because this was a new grant for the state. It got pushed in very quickly and they were learning as they went as well at the state. So originally, the CARES Act was imposed 4 primary limitations on the use of the funds in order for us to be able to achieve reimbursement. The expenditures first needed to be government expenditures. They could not be for shortfalls of revenue, like for missing EAA, rents and so forth. We could not submit for anything that had to do with revenues that we didn't receive. So it had to be a government expenditure. In the beginning, it had to be unbudgeted. It had to be a necessary expense to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And lastly, it had to be incurred on or after March 1st, 2020 through November 6th of 2020. Well, as the months went by, the state had quite a few changes, but the main large changes that happened were, first off, the state updated that budgeted payroll expenses, including overtime and hazard pay for employees, became eligible for reimbursement in a couple of situations. One was for employees who are redeployed to perform substantially different functions due to the COVID-19, meaning their job descriptions and their jobs significantly changed from what they normally would be doing due to COVID-19. Second, for the public health, public safety, healthcare, human services, and similar employees whose services are substantially dedicated to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency. We didn't even know about this change at first, but through the county executive, he had talked to a lawyer at the state and was able to find this out. So we were definitely able to take advantage of this category per the county exec's directive. The other big change that came about near the end of this grant period was that expenditures incurred that we could submit. First, it was November 6th that could go through, and they had changed it to November 17th. And we had 3 reporting periods. They started rolling this out in June, and by July 15th, we did our June expenditures. And then we had a September 15th and November 17th submission period. The first period, the first column on this chart, shows the reporting period. The second column shows what we submitted as a county, and the third column shows what the state actually reimbursed us. So we submitted in total $3.9 million, and were reimbursed $3,067,000. Now, just as a reminder, we got reimbursed $3,067,538, but we were originally allocated $2.773 million. So what we found out near the end of the grant submission as well was that we could submit more if we had the expenditures in those 9 categories, and we could submit more than what we were originally allocated. And so the county exec did ask me to submit more, and per his directive we did. And once the state got all of the submissions in, then they saw what was unused funds from other counties, cities, towns, villages, and they reallocated to people to the areas that were able to submit more expenditures. So we ended up receiving $294,327 more than originally anticipated. So I will be bringing that request to accept that $294,000 before PNF on Thursday, and it'll be coming back before the board on Tuesday, January 19th for approval. With that, I would be willing to take any questions. And
very good. We'll open it up for any questions from any county board member. I see a couple of call-ins. First, I'll call on Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Vicky, for the presentation. This is just an odd question, I guess, but was there any reason why they decided to go from November 6th and extend it to the 17th? One's a Friday, one's a Tuesday. 11
Sure.
days? But you know, what was the point?
Sure, I believe the point was that they were finding that a lot of counties, cities, towns, villages were not submitting their full allocated amount, and the state was trying to give them as much time to use those funds before they reallocated them to other counties, cities, towns, and villages. So I think they were just giving them that extra time. The state had to have their whole $200 million spent by 12/31. So they had to just give themselves enough time to reallocate it.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Bender. Please go ahead, Supervisor Bender.
I see, like for the COVID sick pay, you submitted $340,300 and some odd dollars, and none of that was reimbursed. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why?
Yeah, the reason that I could find was it was the state, as we submitted our last submission, we submitted for more than we had left for the allocation. And so they grabbed it in just a certain order, and that one was not grabbed. And, you know, that one to me should have been one right up there. But it was an eligible expenditure, but we were already over our allocated amount and what they gave us extra for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. There's one more call in. I'll call on Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I watch the finance staff go through this process, I just think they deserve to be commended because there was a pretty steep learning curve. And I think that they definitely, with Mark Harris's assistance, of course, and direction, really capitalized on this opportunity to cover our costs. So I think they deserve kudos for their good work.
Thank you. And if I may, I'd love to give kudos to my Assistant Finance Director, Doug Petrozik, and my Accounting Supervisor, Carol Blackmore. They really did the brunt of the work and were amazing and keeping our general ledger all up to date where it needed to be to understand all of this going on with new budget transfers and that.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude that presentation. I too want to thank you, Director Fitzgerald. Obviously wonderful to see $294,000 additionally allocated to county. And I certainly know, as Supervisor Shorsey said, there must have been a lot of work in figuring out how different allocations would fit those different criteria that occurred behind the scene by you and all the finance staff. So thank you very much for those efforts. Greatly.
Thank you.
Very good. That was our final presentation for this evening. So that concludes our agenda. I'll go ahead and call on Supervisor Albrecht for a motion to adjourn to January 19th. Supervisor Albrecht?
I move to adjourn till January 19th at 6 p.m.
There's a motion.
Second.
Is there a motion and a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say no? Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again on January 19th. Have a great evening, everyone.